Jouts, nu abti, xa'isla nugwa. Hello, I'm called Ab, and I'm xa'isla. And I wanted to do this live video to introduce you to a resource that I created a few years ago. It's called the xa'isla Handbook. So that was the front, this is the back. So this was something that I created to kind of act as a guide to the xa'isla language. So I've got a printed copy here. There's not many of these actually in existence because this is actually a draft. If you see there towards the top, it says draft copy. So this is not a finished product. I haven't really had the time to go through and proofread everything and fix everything up the way I would like it to be. So this is a draft copy, and it just acts as an introduction to the xa'isla language. So I've got a PDF copy that I'll be using to help walk you through, and we're going to switch to that now. So this is the xa'isla Handbook. It is an introduction to xa'isla. So this is the front cover, the outside front cover. This is the inside of the front cover. It just says Jouts, which means hello. So this booklet was created by me at Morrison-Hayward. There's a table of contents here. So I break it down into different categories. You see the page numbers here. So everything was designed to fit into a certain number of pages, 40 to be exact. So the booklet itself is 40 pages, and the cover is, this is the first 2 pages of the cover. This is the front of the cover, and then the last 2 pages are the back cover. But these are all, in the book, it's actually like this is one side of the page, this is the other side of the page. They're actually separate pages because it was printed on letter-sized paper and it was folded in half and stapled. So I'm going to get right into it. I'll go through the preface, which is basically like an introduction to the booklet itself. So it starts off, Jouts, ma miathlans. Jouts, ma miathlans. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the xa'isla Handbook. This will be your companion as you get to know xa'isla, or the xa'isla language, or serve as a reminder if you already know it. So here you'll find some common words and phrases in a handy small format book that you can take along with you anywhere you go. We won't go deep into the language here as this is intended to be an introduction, so it only includes the essentials. So, so that kind of shows the main purpose of the book. It's not really meant to be a in-depth look at the language. It does talk about parts of the language that are not commonly known, but we're not going to spend a great deal of time exploring the inner workings of the language. This is meant to be just a really brief introduction to the xa'isla language. Like, this is meant to be the beginning of your learning. So this is what you should be taking a look at before you even start really studying the xa'isla language. This is meant to be kind of a primer for the xa'isla language. This is the bare minimum of what you should know before you even start learning the xa'isla language. So first things first, since this is in printed form, we'll need to talk about the writing system so that you'll be able to read what's in this book. So I use what I call the xa'isla hybrid orthography in this book, and I explain how it works throughout the book. We'll talk about elements of the writing system, and we'll take a look at some charts to get you familiar with how it works. After that, you can go through the book to find words and phrases that are often asked about. Hopefully this will give you a good foundation that you can continue to build upon as you learn more about this amazing language. Without further ado, xa'isla. Let's speak xa'isla. So I start off by talking about the hybrid orthography. So you might be scratching your head right now and asking, what's an orthography? Well, it's the letters and symbols that make up an alphabet, to put it in the simplest terms. In English, we know A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. And that's kind of a simplified orthography. So sounds are associated with symbols, and that's what makes an orthography. The next question you might ask is, why not, or why use an orthography? There are various reasons, but one of the most important reasons is that there are many sounds in xa'isla that don't exist in English. So if it doesn't exist, then it's hard to use those 26 letters in a way that accurately reflects the unique xa'isla sounds. I'm noticing a typo right here. I used reflect. It should say reflects. I need to add an S there. So I'll make a mental note of that when I go and edit this document. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that there are some complex sounds in the xa'isla language that cannot be reproduced with the English alphabet. You have to go outside of the English alphabet because those 26 letters aren't enough to actually represent some of the unique sounds in the xa'isla language. And that's really one of the biggest reasons why I developed the hybrid orthography in the first place, was to accurately reflect the sounds of the language. Now, many language specialists have worked with the xa'isla language, with Handbook being the first established linguist to develop a writing system in the 1970s. Next came Neville Lincoln and John Rath, publishing a xa'isla dictionary in 1986, using an orthography that was different than Handbook's. So that's been one of the difficulties that we've had in dealing with our language, is that we've had a lot of linguists that have worked with our language in the past few decades. They've all developed their own writing systems. So there were 5 developed since about 1970. So that's a lot. Try to keep that in mind. The last established linguist to do major work in xa'isla was Bach, who used yet another writing system. Read that as systems, because he developed more than one. Each orthography has some advantages and some disadvantages. Handbook's orthographies, he used 3 altogether. I would say officially 2. There was a third that he used, but it didn't appear in any language materials that he developed for the xa'isla public. It was actually used in an essay in a language journal. So that's something else I might change when I revise this document. I would say there's 2 official Handbook orthographies, and I would go further to say that there's one A and one B, and then there's a second orthography. So Handbook's orthographies are difficult to decipher, and the same can be said for Lincoln and Rath's writing system. Bach's last orthography, again I mentioned he developed more than one, so he developed 2 writing systems altogether. His closest to English, but leaves something to be desired when it comes to what linguistically are called lateral symbols. More on that later. So another thing that I would like people to keep in mind is don't worry too much about the terminology. I'm not a trained linguist myself, but I understand some of it. I understand enough to help me learn xa'isla better. And when it comes to the terminology, I use a lot of linguistic terminology because when it comes to each of these concepts, like I have to call it something. I can't just say this thingy and that whatchamacallit and this who's it. I have to call it something. So we'll be taking a look at what they call lateral symbols later on. So again, don't worry too much about the terminology if you don't really understand it. And another thing is that I do include a glossary at the end of the handbook. So I'll take you through that too. So that'll explain a lot of the terminology. Instead of using a single symbol to represent one lateral sound, he used a combination of consonants, which often lead to misinterpretations. So I developed the hybrid orthography with an eye towards the future. I've seen a lot of misinterpretations being made based on past spelling systems, like Box, where he used two consonants to represent one lateral sound. That can be problematic. It can lead to misinterpretations, which can also lead to misunderstandings. So I built what I call preventative measures into the hybrid orthography. So I had an eye towards problems that I've witnessed in the past. I've seen these problems with my own two eyes, and I've kept mental notes of them, and I've thought about ways of reducing or even just completely eliminating those mistakes or those misinterpretations. And that is where the preventative measures came in. So there's quite a few of them that I built into the hybrid orthography. So we could use box orthography as it stands, but then we would have problems with those lateral sounds. So what can we do? How about replacing those problematic consonant combinations with single symbols like the ones that Lincoln and Rath used? All right, now we have the ease of use and familiarity of Box's writing system mixed with Lincoln and Rath's linguistic one sound, one symbol approach to consonants. This is the best of both worlds, a hybrid orthography, problem solved. Not quite. Now, people will need to learn it. The fact that a lot of the symbols are so different than English letters can be intimidating, but have no fear, it can be learned. So again, one of my main goals is to take away the intimidation of learning the xa'isla language. And that's a big part of it. The best way to learn xa'isla or any language is to start with the sounds, which is what we'll be doing in the handbook here. So start from smaller parts and then slowly build up to bigger parts and then bigger parts and then bigger parts as you go along. That's the way my teaching method is designed. And we'll see that a little bit as we go through this handbook that I created. It will take some time. Read some as a lot, but you will be rewarded for your hard work. So this isn't a lot of hard work for nothing. You will be rewarded for putting all this work into learning the language. The ability to read a language helps a great deal in learning to speak it. So if we have one standard writing system, we have consistency. Pay attention to this word, consistency. I cannot place enough emphasis on how important consistency is. And the hybrid orthography was built with an eye towards consistency. So it's something to keep in mind. This will, in turn, make it easier to share the language as there will be little room for variation, which so often leads to misinterpretation. This is why I'll put this in air quotes, phonetic approach or spelling how it sounds, way of writing, is ineffective. So I put phonetic in quotes because it's actually not a phonetic writing system, it's phonic. And it's where people try to write things the way it sounds to them, which might sound like a good way to go about it, but it's actually, it creates more problems than it solves. It's ineffective. And this is the reason why, right here. There's too much room for interpretation. How can that be a bad thing? Well, what if I wrote elephant as elephant? What if I wrote it as two separate words, ella and then fent? We're used to seeing elephant written this way. What if I all of a sudden started writing it that way? Or giraffe as jur-af. Or hour as ow-er. Can you imagine how difficult that would be to read if everything was written like this? I can't write it that way, but that's how it sounds to me. So different words might sound differently to other people, especially to beginners. Once you start really learning the xa'isla language, you will develop an ear for the language. You'll develop an ear for the unique sounds in the language. You'll be able to differentiate between two different sounds, even if there's just a subtle difference between them. You'll be able to hear it because you will have trained your ear to hear those sounds. You'll hear them accurately. So having a standard writing system ensures two things. One, that every sound will be accurately represented. And two, that everybody will spell everything the same way. So this goes back to consistency. If I spell it one way, somebody else spells it another way, another person spells it a completely different way, then where's the consistency? There is none at that point. So no more asking, how does John spell it? Or what was Mary's spelling again? If there's one way of spelling, then there's no more questions. It's spelled one way all the time, every time, by everybody, no matter who it is. That's the main goal, is to have everybody follow this system. And once everybody does that, once everybody learns how to read and write the hybrid orthography, then we will have, what's that word? Consistency. You may have some doubts, but you haven't seen the orthography in action yet. So this is very important. You can't really make a fair judgment until you see how it works. So please reserve any doubts until you've actually seen and learned the hybrid orthography. Keep that in mind. So let's do that, shall we? So the first thing that I go into here is dialects. So before we go any further, it should be pointed out that there is more than one dialect spoken in Kitimat territory. So xa'isla is the Kitimat dialect. xa'isla is the Kitlope Kamano dialect. So there are two distinct dialects. There's xa'isla, which is the northern or Kitimat dialect. And then there's xa'isla, and that is the Kitlope or Kamano dialect, the southern dialect. They were separate dialects until Kitimat and the Kitlope Kamano peoples amalgamated in 1948, and now they're used almost interchangeably. So they still are technically two different dialects, but they're very close, and they're so close that they could be used interchangeably. You can switch from one dialect to another, basically. Linguists use the abbreviation GM for Gitamat and GL for Gitloop. So pay close attention to that. GM is gitamat or gitamat. And GL is gitlob. Gitlob. Another interesting note is that xa'isla and xa'isla are part of the North Wakashan language family. So again, Wakashan is the pronunciation of this language family. There's a Northern Wakashan language family and a Southern Wakashan. So there's North Wakashan and South Wakashan. So the North Wakashan language family consists of Kwakwala, which is the Kwakwakwak dialect. There's also xa'isla, which is the Bala dialect, and Oikyala, and that is the Rivers Inlet dialect. And then there's xa'isla and xa'isla. So these dialects share some common elements, particularly in regards to sounds, word structure, and grammar. So these dialects are similar to each other. They all have exactly the same sounds. If people tell you that one dialect has a different sound system than the other, that's not accurate. They all have exactly the same sounds. And that really comes in handy when you're learning one of these dialects. So if you know the sound system for xa'isla, then you know the sound system for Kwakwala, or for xa'isla, or for Oikyala. They all have the same sounds. So I'm going to switch back to my camera here. So that is an introduction to the xa'isla Handbook. As I said before, this is meant as a very first look, a glimpse at the xa'isla language. And that's just the first 6 pages. There's 40 altogether. So I'll be doing more live sessions, more live streams the next little while. And I'll keep going through the xa'isla Handbook with you. So hopefully this is helpful to people. As I mentioned, I didn't make very many copies of this. I've only printed maybe half a dozen of them altogether. I mostly distribute the PDF document. So I can share this with you. I can share either a printed copy. I would have to print, and actually have to print these myself. If you want a printed copy, that's going to take a while. But I can do that if you request it. Or I can send you the PDF copy. And again, keep in mind that this is a draft. It's not a finished product. I made this with my own 2 hands from scratch. So keep that in mind. I do have plans in the future of finishing this handbook and possibly having it published. So I'm going to give you my, well, actually, why don't you comment, put a comment in the chat if you would like a copy of the xa'isla Handbook, either printed or a PDF copy. You can leave a comment down below, and I'll get that to you. So that's all for this video. Until next time, I'll say, Duk Willigan Tutla. I'll see you. Wah.